Welcome guys, gals and non-binary pals to this week's episode of Buffy Boys, your weekly review of Buffy the Vampire Slayer from a queer, literary and feminist perspective. My name is Joel, one of your hosts, and with me as always is your other homophile host.
Brian, hi, how's it going? Homophile.
I think friend of the homos.
That's not a word, is it?
Yeah, it's a kind of a more antiquated term for it.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so this week we are
talking about Buffy.
Yeah, we watched the episode Family.
Season 5, Episode 6, Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
This first aired on November 7th, 2000. It was written and directed by Joss Whedon, so very little to it there. Which I think I was quite surprised to find when I looked at it. Like, I mean, I wasn't expecting it to be a Joss Whedon written episode. And is it the first Joss Whedon episode of the season?
I think so. And I feel like Joss weirdly has a quite involved hand on Tara's character, specifically.
That's an interesting one. I suppose he specifically wrote the episode that she was introduced, certainly. Okay, so Buffy, here's your Buffy on summary. Buffy tells Giles about Dawn. Tara's redneck family arrive. Her father claims she, like her mother, will turn demonic unless she abandons college and magic. Riley flirts with vampire Sandy. Tara casts a demon obscuring spell which hinders the fight against demon assassins sent by Glory. The Scoobies tell Tara's father that they are her real family. Spike proves Tara's humanity by hitting her. It hurts him. Willow and Tara dance. That's a lot
all those things happen in the episode for the most part, yeah.
I think I was like talking to the wrong part. Oh no, never mind. I was looking at the wrong track. Okay, never mind. Yeah, a lot of those things happen. That's fun. Good. Great.
So for this week, for the bronze banter portion, which speaking of the bronze we see in this episode, we see some underage drinking in the bronze. So hopefully that's a tipsy theme we can carry through our own bronze experience. We were going to talk about the landmark remaster of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1+2, which was released recently for video game consoles the world over. So many of you out there may have childhood memories of playing Tony Hawk's, doing ollies, nollies, 360 McTwists, bonelesses, lip grinds, etc.
But
manuals.
It got remastered recently, and it is a video game. It is a sports video game, which is a funny thing to think about because it's one of the 3 highest rated video games ever. Is Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, alongside I want to say Grand Theft Auto 5 and
Myst.
Well, no, Myst has been reviewed in recent years, and everyone was like, "Oh wait, this is shit."
Yeah.
Now the other one is Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. But the so it's just a very, very good fun game. I remember like when we were younger, we used to play literally spend hundreds of hours playing it. Very notable for its extremely good soundtrack. It's all pop punk and ska and some R&B classics. You have, my favorite song from it would have been Lagwagon by May 16th by Lagwagon, which is a song I listen to constantly these days anyway, and things like Rage Against the Machine. Yeah,
I think through playing Tony Hawk's, I was definitely part of that intersection of Tony Hawk's players who did not actually skate or lead anything resembling a radical skater lifestyle. I did own a skateboard. I was not able to execute a trick, and I do remember that I wasn't necessarily great at propelling myself along, so sometimes I would get on the skateboard and have my mom pull me along as we went down the street.
Wow. Okay.
But I did wear the gear.
I believe that.
And there used to be a skate shop on O'Connell Street. I don't know if it's still there. But
I remember that, yeah.
So I got some stuff there. And it probably contributed to one of my first CDs, as I've mentioned before, being Top 40 Skater Hits.
No, it wasn't. It was Heaven as a Half Pipe, wasn't it?
No, I'm saying they're playing those games generally.
Oh, but wasn't that the name of the I remember that skater compilation. I'm pretty sure it was called Heaven as a Half Pipe.
Maybe that was a subtitle. Yeah,
okay. Subtitle. But because I had that too, it was great.
And one of the songs I think it was from one of the later games, Thug or Tony Hawk's Underground, that I played a lot while I was skating was Frank Sinatra's My Way
Okay, that's bizarre.
Which is one of the songs I picked out from Tony Hawk's to listen to a lot.
Yeah, that sounds like you, to be honest.
Yeah.
But yeah, the remaster is great. It's visually just like incredible. So it's kind of one of those situations where it plays and looks exactly like you remember it looking, i.e., you know, your young child brain filled in all this kind of like space where it was just huge polygons with like detail and imagination and stuff, and it's like, oh, you don't need that anymore. You don't need imagination. Here's what it actually should have looked like, and it's really good fun. I've been playing through it. I actually don't think I'd ever played. I don't think I'd ever significantly played Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 before, because we had a specific. Because like back in the day, like video games were so fucking expensive. So in Ireland, they would have cost like £60 for a new PlayStation game.
60 punts.
Yeah, which like directly converted probably to euro would have been about like 90, and that's not adjusting for inflation. And then to US dollars, it would have been like, you know, $110 or something.
Yeah.
That's, again, not adjusting for inflation.
Yeah, it was an investment to get a video game.
Yeah, exactly. So if you had like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, you weren't necessarily going to get number 1. But yeah, we had 2 and 3, both incredible. And yeah, so I'm getting to enjoy playing the first game now for the first time, which is really nice.
So you've been playing a bit now. You've gotten a bit of practicing. How's it going for you so far?
Good. Yeah, I'm not very good at it, but I am doing it, and I am looking up videos to be like, how do you find all the letters for skate so that you can finish this objective? And I've been really enjoying it because I've been listening to lots of podcasts while I've been playing it. So I was listening to a bunch of true crime podcasts because, I mean, like, just total nonsense and perfect for like filling your brain with rubbish. But actually listening to some reasonably good ones. So I was listening to In the Dark, which is a PBS or public radio.
PBS, yeah, or well, whatever the radio equivalent of PBS is. Yeah.
PBR? No, it's a different thing.
Maybe our American followers can inform us.
So it's a public radio podcast where they're doing investigative reporting on a couple of different cases. One of them is a missing boy who went missing in Minnesota in the 80s or early 90s, and the other one is, the other case they explored is a black man who was put on trial 6 times for the same crime, and basically about how it was it's odd because I have to stay neutral, but like what they're positing is that like the district attorney in that area had a huge vendetta against this person, or like not specifically against this person, but specifically wanted to get this case put through and will do so at any odds. Which both were good. And I was listening to West Cork, so something a bit more local, which is about a murder of a French woman in Cork, which is a county in Ireland, in a very rural location, but it's known for having lots of like I was gonna try to do a Dublinish accent, say Fardeners, but I'm not sure where that sound came from.
Yeah.
So
we're all over the map here.
Foreign nationals, i.e. lots of British people tend to to live there. Yeah, she was killed, and the person who most likely killed her, they managed to interview him extensively. Well, that was really interesting, except that it's a podcast by British people, and they're trying to like figure out Irishness to some degree, and like it's so funny when they're interviewing people who are clearly taking the piss and they're taking them seriously. Yeah,
no, I do occasionally feel a certain soft spot for that, which is that there is a level of inherent like irony or dissembling to how Irish people communicate, which we talked about this before.
Extreme insincerity.
Yeah, but see, the problem is that because we are English speakers and native English speakers by and large, that there's a lack of assumption or lack of understanding around the fact that we use English in just a different enough way to actually confuse communication if you're not familiar with our kind of our dialect or a dialect. Yeah.
Well, no, specifically a dialect. Yeah, it's Hiberno English.
Yeah, I think we've actually specifically talked about Hiberno English on the podcast before, but this is an example of it. It's just, you know, how Irish people talk to each other, while they might be using all the same building blocks as American English or British English, or actually communicates often very different concepts.
Yeah, I mean, the word sure can mean no.
Yeah, so. Sure.
And then I've been listening to Bear Creek, which I haven't finished yet, and it's been interesting so far. But it's about
bears.
It's not about bears, unfortunately. It's about just like a place where 4 or 5 bodies were found in like barrels in a forest, and they weren't identified for like 30 years basically. Anyway, Whatever. So.
And where was this forest?
America.
Were you saying a rural area?
Yeah.
So speaking of sinister things happening in rural America,
Okay.
in this episode of Buffy, we see that Tara's family comes to town.
Are we taking issue with the phrase redneck in that instance?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think it's one of these things that one of these phrases that is similar to how, like, if you're not local to the situation, it's very easy for the term redneck to be diluted, I think, to not be seem as offensive to Irish people as it probably is to people from that area. But I do think it's absolutely a pejorative term.
I think it's a pejorative term. I think it's a classist term specifically.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think it's a way to deride people. It also, like, look at these people. I mean, if you're suggesting that they're rednecks on the basis of, so it's funny because, like, you know, it can mean a derisive term meaning anything from idiot and, like, unintelligent to, like, inbred to, like, backwards. And it's just, it's so funny in America when you see, you know, people in the, in non-urban areas say that, like, you know, the kind of coastal elite or, like, the New York, you know, like, that kind of gross liberal New York stuff. And it's like that's obviously just that's vastly untrue and also like, you know, inappropriate. But then those kind of, like, liberal people tend to do it backwards, where they say, like, you know, oh yeah, the middle of the country is, like, totally backwards and it's like, you know, full of rednecks and all that stuff. It's like, you know, you don't get to do it back. That's ridiculous. It's
actually it's a strange thing in terms of the summary, because what actually happens in the episode is that it's a very Tara focused episode.
The only Tara focused episode.
And her family come to find her because we gradually understand that she is from somewhere far away from Sunnydale, and she has gone away to college to want some independence. What seems to be a very controlling family, one which is very like misogynist around women, and she's had about a year away, and now they've come to collect her, and the implication being that women in her family, the McClay family, which we find out her surname in this episode, have some touch of demon to them,
which comes out when they turn 20 years old.
Yeah, which contributes to their magical affinity, and that's kind of all that's on the page about it. So I don't think, having paid attention to this episode, that there's any implication that they do come from rural America. They obviously don't necessarily come from California, do you know what I mean? But there's only a couple of touches of maybe cousin, what's her name? Cousin Beth. Cousin Beth's manner is maybe characteristic of the American South. The fact that she's referred to as cousin Beth and stuff like that. But the
kind of the Scottish / Irish implication of the name Maclay is a very, like, you know, middle America kind of implication to it, and just the kind of the plaid shirts they're wearing, stuff like that.
But I think there's a lot
of your father sir as well.
No, absolutely. But, like, it's very, very circumstantial. I'm not saying it's wrong, but I'm just saying it's not, like, that's not text as you know, as it's intended, you know. But yeah, I think it's a very interesting episode. I think a very odd episode narratively for the show, and I think to kind of, you know, put the tiger on the table and shout at it, you know, this is an episode that very much presents Tara's inherent Wicca ability as a metaphor for her homosexuality and her queerness. Everything from how she is treated by Willow's friends in the context of this episode, to all of the language around her own kind of self-loathing and self-censoring as a result of being told that there's this evil within her, to how the family kind of look to control her, and, like, what if your friends found out what you're actually like? I'm sure the father being in the room and saying, I'm sure you wanted me to see all of this, being like the Wicca
while
stuff,
holding like a very phallic crystal.
Wanted me to see your toy as well. He's holding like
a
very
says toy.
Yeah, he does.
Very odd.
So it's kind of interesting, because something that isn't actually discussed at all in the episode, even in the context of them interacting with Willow, is the fact that she's in a relationship with Willow.
Yeah, well, I think the implication there is that they do not know.
Yeah, exactly. But, like, it's an episode that is both. I don't think it's. I don't think it's subtext to the extent of being a disservice to queer viewers. Do you know what I mean? It's just substitution.
Yeah, I think this episode, along with a lot of the Willow and Tara content, is pushing the envelope so heavily for queer issues. Like one of the things we overlook about Buffy, and in terms of its representation of queer issues, is that this is a show for teens and late, or kind of 12-year-olds to 17-year-olds, I'd say. Would have, obviously that's not the audience it garnered, but that would have been the audience that was that they were flirting with from the perspective of the network, So the network executives are looking at this, and I'd say it was some pushing of the envelope, and some hard some real wrangling gone on to show things like them in the room at the beginning of the episode, and having an episode like this where there is so much queer context, and at the end of it, Tara and Willow floating above the bronze. And what I'll say in Joss Whedon's defense is that they didn't stop at including some queer characters and see that as we've included some queer characters, that's the end of it. They are now exploring queer issues, which is great.
Yeah. And I will say that, again, we always have to take it in context of what was unfortunately but realistically permissible on networks at the time. And I agree with you, that scene at the start where they're sharing a room together, sharing a bed together, and Willow's being very affectionate with her and saying come and cuddle me as I sleep and all that kind of stuff. There's no kind of chaste roommate vibe about that. Occasionally you see gay people portraying they're wearing full bedtime pajamas and sitting in two single beds that have been pushed near each other, maybe. Do you know what I mean? But this was very intimate and affectionate, and something which I thought was very, very interestingly handled, because in the way that slightly others were disincentivized the portrayal of the rest of the Scoobies was the way that they interact with Tara. Because when they're talking about going to Tara's birthday, and Buffy is always such a sympathetic character, 9 times out of 10 in this show, but the way she was well, I suppose I didn't really remember Tara's birthday, but it's not like it's a social event of a season, and she's she's perfectly nice.
And then they slag her speech ability. Yeah,
well, no, I don't think they were saying that she was uninterpretable. Just that she talks, she makes weird jokes about Wicca stuff that they don't get.
Oh, okay. I thought it was a speech impediment.
No, I actually don't. Well, I could be wrong.
I'll rewatch that. Yeah,
I think it followed on directly from her making a joke about something Wicca in Buffy's dorm room, and people were like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah,
and she was like, "I'm an idiot." But what I actually read from that was that. To be honest, gulf of culture that sometimes queer people have between straight people, where because we specifically see her say the same joke to Willow later in the episode, and Willow's that's so funny, and then being we know she likes Willow, and that's something she's interested in, but we don't really know anything else about her. And what that read to me was kind of an interrogation of the fact that once you know that Tara is Willow's gay girlfriend who is with her lesbian partner Willow, it's kind of they didn't really go any further in terms of getting to know her. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know there's always, people are often defined by their relationships with other people, and that's a generic thing, but this was something I felt actually weirdly rang true, in the sense that she was just Willow's girlfriend.
Yeah.
I actually thought it was quite interesting.
And what they were saying as well was that they didn't understand how they're going to enjoy this party, because presumably it was just going to be a bunch of gays.
Yeah,
who they couldn't really relate to, or they didn't know, or and all this stuff.
Like a Wicca vibe, maybe we won't fit in, or it's awkward, on point.
And it's very on point, and it's also very kind of typical straight nonsense. It's oh, maybe I'll be the outsider of this situation, and it's well, maybe. But maybe then inspect all the situations in which there's one queer person in this situation and identify that as being something else. One of the things I think is really interesting about the representation of Willow and Tara is the focus on bedrooms. I think it's a really fascinating queer note, specifically. So in this episode at the beginning, they're talking about Miss Kitty Fantastico. Unfortunately, the last appearance of Miss Kitty Fantastico, and as we both noted, there isn't a scene in season 7 where it suggested that Dawn shot Miss Kitty Fantastico with a crossbow at some point by accident.
Rip.
Yeah. Such a lovely kitten, so not fair. But
and a pivotal part of Primeval, in my opinion.
I would agree. But the bedroom scenes with Willow and Tara are consistently reoccurring. So their relationship seems to be defined by intimate conversation in the bedroom, and I find that to be a very almost quite an accurate representation of queer relationships, because you there's almost a sense of like, you know, that's where they get to be able to speak their truth, which sounds ridiculous. Speak honestly and feel unguarded together is in a bedroom setting, where and it's not a sexual thing. More so, it's a. I think probably a lot of queer young people or queer people had a lot of their formative relationship and maturing moments in another queer person's bedroom, chatting, if you get me, because when you're a straight person, you can do that at a bar, you can do that at a cinema, in the cinema, or at a restaurant, and all this stuff. And if you're a young queer person, it's very likely you're not very comfortable doing that. And
particularly if you're in a family or a family setting where you have quite like very shared spaces and stuff like that. And obviously if you're still in the closet, you're still processing that or whatever. For obvious reasons, the bedroom is the only place for which you have like an uninterrogated, occasionally private space, you know. And I would say, there's like, I'm not saying this is on the page for the episode, but like there's a commonality in the sense of almost like, you know, the vampire requiring an invitation into the home. It's like there's a sense of threshold, which is at the same time ephemeral, but also very
a strong protection.
Yeah, exactly. A border of like you pass within it, and you're like, okay, I have some sense of delineation here. And I think that's a very astute point. I think that they are defined in many ways by that that kind of inner sanctum space that they have, and obviously without putting too macabre note on it, like the tremendous sundering of that is shot in a bedroom.
But I would say, okay, I think that I'm also thinking of scenes like in Once More Worth Feeling or Tabula Rasa, is that what I'm
like it's an episode.
No, I think that is what I mean here in terms of like, you know, Willow doing overly just forgetfulness stuff. I think that you probably see more of Willow and Tara's bedroom. Certainly more than you ever saw Willow's bedroom before. This, but also I would say probably even more distinctly than Buffy's bedroom ever. So, Buffy's bedroom I think is like it's quite it's not very notable.
It's not active.
No, it's not. It doesn't feel like a space that she ever shares with anyone. It feels like a starting point. Whereas Willow and Tara's bedroom and bed and like marriage bed kind of situation is like very much the source of scenes. Anyway, I just think that's really interesting.
Now we've gotten a disgraceful amount of time into this episode without noting that Cousin Beth in this episode is played by
not an Oscar winner, Amy Adams. I was talking to Jill about this last night. My favorite meme of all time that I've ever seen is based on 3 billboards outside
Ebbing,
Missouri, which is the quite good Frances McDormand movie, which you refused to see. Because you took a notion. You were like, no, it's too awful. It's too racially charged or something. Have you basically read some article somewhere and you're like,
I draw so few borders, and
it's always about stupid stuff.
Precipitates you to try and penetrate them.
I never tried to penetrate it. I went to the cinema to see it with someone else. So there you go.
Yeah, we're still talking about it.
Yeah. So in which basically a young woman is raped and murdered, and her mother and justice is never brought for her. So her mother rents 3 billboards outside, but
Ebbing,
Missouri, and it says, I can't remember exactly what it says, but it says
basically repudiating the sheriff for having not done anything about it.
It's like raped and murdered and still no justice. Why sheriff something or other?
Yeah.
Sheriff Sam Rockwell. And this one has like overlaid on top of this is Amy Adams invented acting and still no Oscar. Why Academy?
This must be a very very early appearance for her.
I think it is. Apparently, it's her first noteworthy acting role. Another very early noteworthy acting role is in Catch Me If You Can. Did you ever see that?
I didn't. No.
Steven Spielberg, 2001, I think. Huh?
Too offensive to me.
Probably. And it's about a Leonardo DiCaprio writing bad checks basically and flying all over the world and based on a real person.
And Amy Adams, of course, just to be absolutely clear, the actress in 2 of your favorite properties, Sharp Objects,
and Arrival.
HBO miniseries and Arrival.
Yeah, and also many other
things, of course, as well. Enchanted, I think people might know her from very clearly as well.
And she's wonderful in Enchanted. She has got she's an absolutely incredible actor.
But she plays a very broad character here, and she does a great job. From a script development point of view, I think Cousin Beth is quite a funny character or a funny inclusion, because what they needed was a woman who could have certain censoring and peer censoring interactions with Tara
without being her sister,
because she can't be in the family, and if she's a man there's an authority issue there. So it's like, okay, Cousin Beth, I guess it's just you can see the work done there a little bit.
I'm sure there was like a 5-minute discussion in the writers' room where I was like, Cousin Beth, and it's like, no, she's definitely getting married to Donnie. It's like, no, I think it's better if she's a cousin, because then the shame is in the family, etc. Actually, very interestingly, if we're talking about actors in that family scene, Donnie, I was saying to you, I can't remember his name now. Here we go. Oh god, my handwriting. Kevin Rankin. Yeah, it's Kevin Rankin. And her father's name, his surname is also Rankin, but they are not related.
And Kevin Rankin, who played a main character in season 2 of The Umbrella Academy, which we mentioned recently.
So he's in season 2 of The Umbrella Academy.
Ethan, I want to say.
I can't remember his character.
I think it was
name.
Ethan. Yeah.
But he was quite prominent. And he has a very interesting death. He was also in a couple of episodes in *Halt and Catch Fire* and *Breaking Bad*. Or he's in quite a bit of *Breaking Bad*.
And what I will say is, from all of and was the father anything interesting, Nicky?
I didn't.
He had what did we say it was? It was
he had bargain basement Willem Dafoe face. Yeah. But that being said, Willem Dafoe is definitely bargain basement already. Of
someone else.
Yeah. Except in one department in which he's apparently very much not bargain basement. To the point where he has to have... this is an explicit podcast. I'm allowed to say, oh wait, my young cousin listened to this an episode of our podcast recently.
She listened to a couple of minutes of the bronze banter and turned it off. So I think we're fine.
Okay, well apparently he is... So this is like a famous rumor about Willem Dafoe, that he is so well endowed that in which movie was it?
Antichrist,
yeah. They had to bring in a body double to replace him because it was unrealistic.
It'd be distracting. It was distractingly and logistically challenging, yeah.
And Antichrist having any distractions from it, God forbid.
Yeah.
Have you seen that movie?
Absolutely not.
I
know enough about it.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely bizarre. It's also, I don't know, I have such a troubled relationship with Lars von Trier, because I think he's a misogynist, genuinely. And I think a couple of his movies have some of the best developed female characters of all time. And I also just absolutely adore his movies that aren't awful. So,
yeah. Well, how we get here? We're talking about the McClades. I actually think they all do a great job here. I think they're quite plausible, and
they're also not threatening.
They're not. It's just there's a menace to it, but it's that tension of, some of the things they say are quite broad or stereotypical, but that's because people do say quite broad and ridiculous things about family, and there is that kind of awkward untouchableness where it's like you can't really interfere in some other person's family stuff even when you should, and then sometimes you can, and it's like all of that is kind of in the space, I think, as well. And I think there's a lot of contrast obviously with Mr. McClade being such a clear father figure, being a father, but playing
stereotypical
father figure, and then contrasting it with Giles in this episode as well,
who also refers to himself jokingly as a patriarch.
Yeah, he does, and he helps Buffy move out of her dorm room, and I think very, very notably, minutes after the incident with the monk where she finds out about Dom being the key, she goes and tells Giles only and says don't tell anyone else. I think that relationship is really well displayed here and supportive.
It's also I think it's being patched up specifically as well post season 4, where she forgot to tell Giles about Riley.
Yeah.
And the academy, or whatever you call it.
But they were good. The family, basically, I think were a strong addition to this.
I think so too, and they were a menacing presence, not through any supernatural means, but purely through the means of being of the dark secret that you don't want to portray, and it's a very scary kind of space of a queer person's friends and family mixing, and the potential for outing and disgust and real genuine familial horror. Anyway. Yeah,
the kind of the tectonic crash of your code switching, where you can't transmit in two directions at the same time.
Yeah, and it was literal in this episode where Tara had to kind of check where she was directing her attention, and eventually had to realize that the power structure here meant that she had to quietly call her father sir in the presence of a lot of people who genuinely like and respect her to some degree.
Yeah. Well, once she had catharsis, they all went to her birthday and had a rocking old good time. So
it was such a funny montage. I loved it. So yeah, one of the things to be noted here in this episode is the gang dynamics is quite interesting, just generally. So you have like, I think just very comfortable. I think there's a scene at the beginning of the episode when they are doing the moving out of the of Buffy's dorm room,
which she'll never move back into.
Yeah, and the very much the sore thumb there, besides Tara being the textual sore thumb, is Riley, who ends up wrestling with Xander, which is not within his character.
Yeah, it's really odd.
And in fact, when he tried to wrestle someone recently, it was noteworthy as being so out of character for him, i.e. when he attacked Buffy when he was still on like roids.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I mean, weird writing note, but otherwise, I think the family dynamics here are really, really, really strong, and specifically the person who I think is bringing the most to it is Dawn. I think Dawn plays, or Michelle Trachtenberg plays such a great little sister character and plays into the dynamics of everyone here so well. I think it's just really, really well done.
Yeah, something which
I'm a Dawn apologist, I gotta say.
I have to say I'm on that train as well. What I thought was notable, and not notable in context, but like notable in terms of character development, is when Buffy is trying to dissuade her from going out by herself because she's afraid, totally legitimately, that Glory's going to kidnap her. Dawn is very much of the youth speak as well when she's like talking about like I'm so glad that you're moving back into the house. This is me displaying my gladness. And it's like she actually does sound like a Summers in that respect, and I think that's very empowering for her integration into the cast.
Agreed. Yeah.
So yeah,
there's also like we have to note that the best parts of Dawn really reflect on Buffy's influence on her. So at the end of the episode, with absolutely no power to her whatsoever, when Buffy says you'll have to get through me to get to Tara, basically, if you think you're going to take her away against her will, and Dawn says yeah, me too, and it's like there's no motivation there beyond a goodness, which I think Dawn has a genuine goodness in there that's very much about being Buffy's sister.
Absolutely. I don't think she knows in many ways enough about the situation to like be really compelled to do that. It is just like that is purely from her own self. Do you know what I mean? And it's before she has any identity crisis or anything like that. But obviously, there's a big reflection here on, I think quite to Buffy's credit at the start of the episode, talking to Giles. She's like, Dawn isn't like real in many ways. She wasn't there when Hank left, but I want to protect her because she's now a person. And then that being reflected in Dawn in some ways validating that by like also wanting to protect someone else who's on the outside. There's like a concatenation of constructive feeling here. Do you know what I mean? Like goodness, big X goodness to a certain degree.
I agree. Yeah, I think this episode and No Place Like Home, Mark Fields notes this, are really much companion episodes. I mean, this episode begins the same night that No Place Like Home ends, which is really unusual. So it does kind of feel almost like a very informal two-parter, and it's very much the same themes. So No Place Like Home involved Buffy trying to struggle with her family structure and Dawn's place in it. And this episode, begins with her talking to Giles, and her line when she says that she wants to that Dawn is her sister essentially is I have to take care of her. I want to. I think that is those aren't follow-on sentences. That's a correction. She doesn't have to take care of her. She just wants to, and it is an active choice she's made where the memories fake, or though they might be, are also fake for Dawn, and this is important.
Yeah, and I think it's a comment on representation, that something constructed can still leave a real imprint rather. Like even and this is where kind of the line draws in the show between magic and character, in the sense that yes, you can use magic to without causation impress these memories upon people, but they are still changed by the virtue of what they feel they've experienced. So yeah, I think it's very very thematically kind of tied up in that way, and I think that the group dynamics really gel in the finale or the end of the episode, where Anya is kind of there as kind of a reformed ex-demon, kind of like, wait, excuse me, what kind of demon is she?
Yeah.
And then we're like, well, what does it matter? It's like, you don't think we know anything about anything here, do you know?
Yeah.
Even the thing you're trying to talk about.
I didn't like Spike punching her though.
Okay, I felt that there was a way that he could have pinched her.
He could have punched her in the arm as opposed to the nose.
Exactly, but I thought that is true to character.
Spike is he's not a good person. It felt like maybe just like enjoying violence against a woman for a second there that I wasn't super comfortable with.
Maybe just like a recklessness about it, you know? And then we also have the weird, obviously, injection of the Spike stuff here where
so the context for this is that Tara has cast a hiding spell, so very much following up from the episode in season 4 where they're looking for a demon. I can't remember what context.
Adam, trying to find Adam.
Were they looking for Adam? Okay.
I believe you're looking for Adam, yeah.
And they do a demon detection spell, and Tara intentionally fucks it up so it doesn't work, which was shown in the opening of this episode. She casts a spell to hide the demonic aspect of her from the Scooby specifically, which means that when Glory sends her, a demon that she found in the hospital, the Scoobies can't see him.
Yeah, three of them actually.
The three of them, yeah, they're assassins essentially. The scene in which the invisible fighting scene. It was actually really tense. It was actually, and really, I think, well choreographed and well done and very well communicated, because something like that can get very messy, or like they can end up glorifying their own use of like ridiculousness.
We saw just enough from their perspective and just enough from like the audience's perspective that the demons were there but they couldn't see them. And I think that's difficult to do, and I think they did it well.
And Spike arrives along and he can see the demons, but they can't because he hasn't been affected. And they can't see Spike, so he ends up saving Buffy without being seen or thanked, having gone there really thinking that he would love to see her killed, basically. Claiming
this to Harmony, but really he doesn't want her to die. He's looking for an invite into the gang, essentially.
He is.
And looking back now, in that scene in the hospital, we essentially see Ben getting changed. This demon in the changing room, I think it's implied that they're there to pilfer marrow from babies.
Like bone marrow, and they're doing it from the hospital.
But in the same room, in the change room, as Ben, Glory appears and kidnaps the assassin. And obviously knowing that Glory and Ben are one and the same, that makes perfect sense. Out of context, but that's a bizarre scene for a viewer for the first time, because there's no correlation with why they would be beside each other at all.
So I think the implication there is that the Glory potentially is like on the heels of the stuff around Ben having known known Dawn and stuff. So I think it's supposed to be like, oh, Dawn or Glory's getting close to Ben to some degree. Anyway, it's a weird one. But yeah, so the just the spell itself is really interesting in the sense that it's just very sad and desperate, where Tara is trying to hide a part of herself, and as we've noted, definitely a code switching kind of thing. It's also there's you could read it as a metaphor for not being, when you're not honest with your friends, when you're not yourself with your friends, you potentially do more damage than good, because she ends up like harming them through her, not dishonesty, but her, because I don't think not being out is dishonest. I don't think in this instance trying to protect your friends from your demonic self.
Well, just through her actions, she puts them in danger because they don't have all the facts, and she can't help. Obviously, the kicker line being that her father being like, who are you to interfere in her affairs? We're her blood kin, which is nothing anyone would ever say. It just sets up the next line where Buffy's like, we're her family. Which is got a little emotion about it. It's nice. It's nice.
It is. I just really like this episode.
Yeah, it's good. It's kind. It's kind.
It is, and the conclusion is Willow and Tara having a dance in the bronze amongst all their lesbian Wiccan friends, and
I don't think they have many, but anyway.
Yeah, and floating above the dance floor to a song, which as I said last week, I think the first episode I ever saw of Buffy. And looking back, lol.
That'll set you on a path, yeah.
Yeah, Buffy made me gay, clearly.
Something to mention, I think, briefly as a starting subplot in this episode, because it will recur, is Riley is continuing to kind of have friction with Buffy. And
what was the cause of the friction in this episode again?
So basically, she is being weird around Dong, and she hasn't told him why she's weird around Dong. He can tell us something, basically. So he goes to Willie's.
He's exhibiting a lack of trust here, I think.
Yes,
more so than her exhibiting a lack of honesty.
He's not in control.
No.
And that's it. So he goes to Willie's bar, and there's no Willie there. There's just sub Willie, the deputy bartender.
Billy,
yeah. And he runs into a woman who, in a kind of a deep cut, is a woman who is sired by Vampire Willow in Doppelgang Land, who he buys a drink for, and it's kind of the start of his weird kind of vampire brothel arc thing.
One of the worst arcs in the show. So we'll see where that goes, that whole thread. It goes nowhere good. Well, it leads to Riley leaving, and grand. I'm fine with that. Okay. Do you want to do some Buffy bits, Joel?
Absolutely.
All right. So a very Brian-specific Buffy bit is that in the bar while Riley is talking to Sandy, a Yolo Tango song is playing, Tears Are in Your Eyes.
Bizarre.
Yolo Tango are an absolutely incredible band from Hoboken in New Jersey, I want to say, but it might be New York. I think it's New Jersey. They're one of my favorite bands of all time. They're, I think, probably the most underappreciated band who have produced the most masterpieces, if you get me. They're incredible. They're just like an indie band. I went to see them live actually one time. It was really, really, really good. But yeah, it's a wife-husband duo as the lead drummer and guitarist, and they both sing, and then a guy on bass. But it's really good. I just really like them.
Not really a good fit for Willie's bar, I don't think.
No, and also just like, who went off and licensed that specifically? Yeah. We're like, oh, do you want to get some Yolo Tango this week for Buffy? Anyway, we get an update on the whereabouts of Hank Summers. He is in Spain with his secretary, being a stereotype. We find out that Dawn cried for days after him and their mother broke up. And
that Buffy's contacted Hank when Joyce started getting sick, and he hasn't responded yet, which is...
What a scumbag.
Yeah, gutter behaviour.
Yeah, absolute scumbag. Oh yeah, apparently Joss Whedon has said about season 5 that Buffy's love interest for season 5 specifically is Dawn.
Yeah, I can absolutely say that, yeah.
I think that's something we're going to have to explore further. So one of my notes here in my notes that I've written down is Tara's family playing role of glory.
What do you think he meant by that, bro?
I don't know really what I meant by that at all.
Driving her crazy?
Maybe. Anyway, so just take it that way you will. Maybe they're playing the role of glory.
We'll chew on that one.
Yeah.
I like that when one of my Buffy bits is when Buffy has to describe Glory to Giles so they can try to identify her. She's kind of like Cordelia. Which I think is quite accurate, and also funny because Cordelia is part demon at the moment, so there are kind of more...
No, she's not.
She has a sliver of demon in her at the moment.
Is that the tooth?
So what happens as the show goes on as Angel goes on, is the visions become more debilitating for her because she is so human.
Okay.
And she has this like little bit of Doyle's essence essentially. So she does actually fuse with a demon. She is made part demon to be able to carry the burden. Okay.
I'll buy that.
But there's like Cordelia and demons become closer and closer together, so it's like a weird intersection. But that actually is 100% something that happens. She sees a vision of a woman who had the visions before and stayed human, and the back of her head is blown out. So it's a visual I remember.
Yeah.
And otherwise, there's a line where Tara says that she was worried that Willow would be ashamed if she saw her family, all that kind of stuff. And which I like to start off with, because Tara's fear there was more about. It wasn't that necessarily she thought she was bad, but that her family reflected badly on her. She would see that she's actually like them. So I think that's appropriate, do you know what I mean, to a certain degree. And then Willow says that having seen where you've come from, I'm more proud of you because of who you've become. I just thought that was like a really constructive note. Because if you're going to talk about family so much on a show, you kind of want to get that right.
Yeah.
In the messaging that you're putting out there. And yeah, there's a real... who you are is what you do, not where you're from thing that Buffy puts into the world, which I really respect.
I agree. One last note, there's a really nice tracking shot, which is really unusual for Buffy, into the dorm room when they're all moving out. It's done with a nice wide angle lens, and I just like, I wonder if they've been watching a lot of West Wing at the time and they took influence from that. Okay, some fashion notes. So Willow and Tara are in almost like, most stereotypical Ren Fair, like, Wicked lesbian outfits that they ever do in the show. I'm not a huge fan personally, but that's okay. Xander is wearing a nice and understated light blue long sleeve t-shirt at the beginning of the episode, and looks pretty well, and then goes and fucks it all up by the end of the episode by wearing a blazer and like a polo shirt, and he's like disgustingly slicked back his hair, and it's all lank and gross, and he looks just the worst he ever looks in this show.
I feel like we say that a lot though.
I think this okay. No, he doesn't look the worst he ever looks in this show. He looks the least attractive he ever looks in the show at that point. Anya manages to get a fringe between the scene in the magic box and the scene in the bronze in the episode at the end of the episode, which was interesting.
Brian, you call it the magic box. Well done.
What did I? Oh, magic shop.
No, you were right with the magic box.
No, I know, but I usually call it the magic shop.
Yeah, no, they all have a makeover for Tara's birthday.
And
Don's wearing like a full length dress or whatever. Yeah,
he sure is. Yeah, and actually don't have any other fashion notes. Do you have any fashion notes?
No, just that Amy Adams is dressed in a very kind of Oklahoma exclamation point milkmaid kind of.
Oh, we could have talked about. I'm thinking of ending things, but that would have required one of us to have understood. I'm thinking of ending things.
Yeah. I'm still thinking of ending things.
Yeah.
Maybe next time. Worth watching. Could you recommend it?
I could not recommend it to a single person.
No, it's Byzantine. It was on Netflix.
I really liked it. Actually, yeah, one last note about kind of a Buffy bit is that at one point Amy Adams calls Tara a selfish bitch, and I was like, geez,
out of nowhere.
Yeah, it really was out of nowhere. And then I was like, I'd like Amy Adams to call me a selfish bitch. Anyway,
B. Ryan,
death count.
We have. I knew this and I forgot.
Like you don't. I'd say in the last 60 episodes you've
cut this out.
Gotten this ready.
Cut this out.
Never.
See, the three decks in the episodes are the three Leok demons who come to try to assassinate the gang. One who is killed generically by Spike, one whose head is crushed in by Buffy, and one nicknamed Baby who is partially curb stomped on a step by Buffy.
Yeah,
has his neck snapped.
I saw a couple of places suggesting that was an American History X reference, and I was not.
Really, is not.
With that,
no, at all.
I also saw a couple of places suggesting that when I can't remember who they say. I think they're saying that Glory's not going for miscongeniality, and they're like, "Oh, that's a miscongeniality reference because that came out in early 2000." And I was like, "Well, miscongeniality is also just a thing."
Yeah.
So. And then, okay, rating. Joe, what is your rating for this episode?
I think I'll give this episode a solid 8.5 Oscars for Amy Adams.
Okay, tell me about that.
I think it's a really good episode. I enjoyed the representation of the themes. I thought it was deft without being overly subtle, and I thought it was effective in conveying a message, which is not actually usually the message that these kind of shows put across.
Yeah, sure. I'm going to give it 9 sub-rating soars out of 10.
Cool.
I have a real soft spot for this episode to start with. I think it's a lot of what I really like about season 5. The themes are close to home. It's also well handled. I really enjoy that it's about a character that doesn't usually get the limelight and won't get the limelight from this point on. I think it was specifically well acted, and just across the board, really like it. I don't know how much the really liking it is. I was sitting through it and I was like, oh, would I be like a champion for this episode? As in, like, if I was in a room and we were trying to like bash out which are the best episodes of Buffy, and I was trying to argue for this being in the top 25 kind of thing, would I try to argue for this being in the top 25? I think maybe, but I'm gonna have to sit with it. Yeah, I really like it. Okay, are you ready for the Cordelia chase, Joel?
I'm primed.
So guys.
So this week was Guys Will Be Guys.
Guys Will Be
But
Guys.
the guys is spelled like a guise, as in a disguise. So it's a pun, I think. So, yeah, interesting episode. So the basic...
I didn't hate it. I thought it was actually like weirdly like scene to scene enjoyable.
The weird thing is there's a a lot of commonality happening thematically across Buffy and Angel with these episodes, and I don't know. I think it's intentional.
Shared a lot of the same writers and stuff, and shared a lot of this. Like obviously, Joss Whedon was very involved in both, so I wouldn't be too surprised if just even by like bleeding.
Yeah, absolutely.
Came upon the same themes.
But the premise is that there is a contract comes up for Angel investigations. Angel is not present. There's like a mafia thing going on, and they want Angel now, or else they're going to shoot Cordelia. So Wesley pretends to be Angel, and a lot of the episode is him acting out this role of pretending to be Angel, vampire with a soul, defender of the night, cursed to, etc., etc. The actual contract itself is a mafia thing, but instead of the traditional mafia, it's like, oh, they're mafia but they're wizards and they do magic stuff, and that's the bit. And to protect the mafia guy's daughter on coming up to his birthday. The twist towards the end of the episode, and actually something Angel is very good for, which I think differentiates it from Buffy, is it does twists. It's always like, here's the monster of the week, but there's a catch at the end. And it's not really something Buffy ever does to a large degree.
I think that's to Buffy's.
Yeah, but it's like, it actually does differentiate. I often find, I've often found them, fun, surprising. The twist is that he's trying to protect his daughter
because he wants to sacrifice her.
He wants to sacrifice her for immortal power, etc.
And she has to be a virgin to be sacrificed.
Yes. So it's played by a woman who character's called Virginia. I couldn't really identify anything else she's been in, but she's in 4 episodes of this. We think she's the mother in the Runaways TV show, which came out I think last year as well. It was
like 3 years ago.
3 years ago.
There were 3 seasons and it's finished now.
God, I'm aging. But she's fairly charismatic. A lot of the comedy and a lot of the impulse in the episode comes from them treating Angel like a normal vampire and Wesley not being a vampire, so having to drink blood and be like, a mirror, get her away, etc. Yeah. But he's quite funny.
Yeah. Alexis Bledel does a good job here.
Yes, he does. He has.
Oh, come on, Joe.
It's funny.
What?
That was funny.
What was?
You calling Alexis Degas Alexis Bledel.
Okay, I just want you to note my joke.
Aha.
Thank you.
And that all plays out pretty well. It's contrived for certain, and a lot of it has a dun 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 kind of farce music underneath it.
I do enjoy good farce music.
Yeah. And then the other side of it is that Angel's trying to sort out all the stuff with Darla. So he goes to Lauren, who puts him on to Swami. Swami.
I don't know what that is really.
I couldn't be any more specific, but it's like a spiritualist, a faith healer from a particular religion or background. I don't know what it is. I should probably look that up. I cannot, as an aside, looking at Lauren and he's saying, I'm like, I can't believe I didn't just look at this guy and be like, this is the gay character or the gay coded character. It went over my head to the degree. But the guy he goes to is like a really kind of plain smoking working class blue collar kind of American, where he's expecting kind of a traditional kind of Tibetan holy man kind of vibe. And again, he had the vibe where he was actually very similar to Kate Lockley's dad, I thought, in vibe.
Definitely.
And we also thought that he was the guy from Arrested Development who keeps getting his arm pulled off.
But he's not a part.
He's not. And he kind of gets into how, why is Angel so obsessed with appearances and hair gel and stuff if he doesn't have a reflection? Why is he so self-centered when he's meant to be all about other people, etc.? What's he actually trying to do? And it's actually reasonably interesting in the sense that he does start to kind of get under Angel's skin and make him question himself, and that's actually the goal, because he's an imposter who's killed the original guy, and Wolfram and Hart are trying to get him to turn. And then one of those classic kind of, Angel's actually superpowered moments where he thinks he's out of Angel's reach when he's standing in the sunlight, and Angel uses a fishing hook to reel him in, which is quite violent,
and ridiculous.
And then they all come together for the reveal at the end. Wesley takes charge, and Angel and Dave Boreanaz get some comedic moments, being like, can I have my jacket back, etc. And they say, but we want an angel, we want a vampire with a soul, because she has to be a virgin. He's a eunuch, and he's like, I'm not a eunuch. So it's all very, very silly. Gong is a complete fifth wheel here. He's in the sense that he's there,
fourth, but
whatever, but a fourth wheel on a tricycle.
Okay.
He's or on a does that big bike have 3 wheels? The penny farthing.
They 2 wheels.
I think they can have 3 wheels. Anyway,
who did we see? Jackass 2.
Jackass 2. Yeah. He doesn't have any motivation to be here other than he's been cast in the show. but that's whatever. And yeah, the conclusion is funny. I would say overall, again, I'll give it a solid 7 failed feminist gestures. I thought
I'll go the same.
yeah, it was definitely an episode of television. Do you know what I mean?
And it was much less like cringe at times. The comedy like came across as comedy. There weren't any serious parts where it didn't need to be. There was no crazy flashing scenes. Yeah, it was all really well. It was reasonably well, like, you know, handled.
I think 2 discoveries of the show is that Alexis Bledel and David Boreanaz are both quite funny.
Alexis Denisoff. We find out that while he was quite good at being a comedic character in Buffy, he's quite good at being a serious character in this. Yeah. And while Dave Boreanaz is quite good at being a serious character in Buffy, he's actually very good at being a comedic character in this. Actually,
in terms of character development, like obviously Angel's kind of coming apart of the scenes a little bit here, and it's really starting. And I think they take time with that in a way which is, I think, earned. But also, Wesley does genuinely resolve this. He does come back to defend her. He does make good choices, and he does fight competently.
Yeah, and he has slept with her as well.
He did sleep with her as well, yeah.
So she wasn't a virgin before that anyway, so it's fine.
But I was thinking when he was fighting, it's like they're slowly turning the dial, like cooking a frog. Do you know what I mean? Like,
because he's not a joke when he's fighting. He's actually competent.
Exactly. Yeah. He's kind of getting it done. And he's a little surprised himself, but it's coming together for him. So it's his arc developing, I think. So yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yep. Okay, great.
Okay, so that's everything for this week. We hope you enjoyed it. We hope you're keeping well. If you enjoyed this episode, please let us know. Tell your friends. Tell your Pennywise demons. Pennywise.
Joker. Did that? I don't think the video is really viral at all.
No, I think that's embedded in our subculture. But how will you find this video, which me and Brian can't stop referencing to each other?
Just put into YouTube. Joker. Pennywise train.
Yeah. Or Joker Pennywise subway or something like that. Yeah. You will know when you have found it.
Joker
Pennywise. And we will see you next time
on Buffy Boys.
I'm
actually so ashamed that we just did that. Okay.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye-bye.